Hi, my name is Alex. I'm currently working on my commercial pilot rating, and I wanted to break down generally my career path as a civilian pilot. For any friends and family that had questions, it can get kind of tricky if you don't really know what's going on. So let's break it down from the start. I started my training up in Gainesville, Florida, as a student pilot. So to become a student pilot, generally all you really need to do is show up to a flight school at a local airport, and you apply for your student pilot certificate, generally by just showing like a driver's license and a passport. However, you can't just fly by yourself, fly passengers wherever you want, start flying for the airlines, right? Generally, you'll always be flying with a flight instructor. And the first rating you're kind of working towards is the private pilot rating. So once you complete most of your training for student pilot, you go to take your private pilot check ride. This is usually done by a DPE, an FAA kind of pilot examiner. And if they give you the all clear, they think you're satisfactory according to the airman certification standards, you become a private pilot. So as a private pilot, you get some new privileges. You can now act as PIC. That is pilot in command. You are in charge of that aircraft basically. So you can fly by yourself, solo, and you can also take passengers. However, generally, you cannot make money or fly for hire. A common misconception is you're a private pilot, you must fly private jets. That is generally not the case, because jets require a type rating. As a fresh private pilot, it'd be pretty hard, and it costs a lot of money to get a type rating for a jet, especially if you generally can't get paid for it. So now you're a private pilot, you want to work on your next rating. The next rating most people go for is their instrument rating. Your instrument rating allows you to fly below VFR conditions, and all VFR means is visual flight rules. That means I can see outside the cockpit. I'm flying generally by, looking outside. So this allows you to now fly through clouds and also fly an IFR flight plan. And there's a lot more that goes into this, but this is just the big idea here, the big picture. And the instruments rating is important because if you don't get that, you'll have limitations put on what you can do as a commercial pilot. So as a commercial pilot, generally speaking, you can now fly for compensation or hire as long as you're abiding by the rules for that operation that you're flying for. So for instance, if I'm flying for a charter company, right, that's usually Part 135, I would need to abide by those rules and be compensated the right way as long as I'm following those rules. And so if I become a commercial pilot without my instrument rating, the biggest limitation you'll have put on your rating is you won't be able to carry passengers greater than 50 nautical miles from that departure airport or fly at night with passengers. So it's pretty important you get that instrument rating because it'll be pretty hard to get hired if you have limitations on your rating. And another big misconception as a commercial pilot is you're a commercial pilot. People love to ask, which airline do you fly for? Well, you can't fly for an airline yet. What you need to fly for an airline is your airline transport pilot rating, or your ATP. And we'll get to that in a second. So generally, after you get your commercial pilot, there's two routes you can take. You can then go for your multi, which just means multi-engine, so any aircraft with more than one engine. You can go for your multi-engine rating, or you can go for your certified flight instructor rating. And what this does is it allows you to teach private pilots and commercial pilots, and student pilots as well. So this allows you to start making money. However, you're probably not going to get hired in today's market. So to get hired, you'll need to have your CF double I, or your CFI is what we call it. And this allows you to teach pretty much all types of students. So it allows you to teach those instrument rated students as well. So after you get your CF double I, and you get your multi, somewhere in between here, right? You can kind of choose after you get your commercial. So you'll need to have generally both of those. You can apply for your ATP. And some of those requirements is like you'll need 1,500 hours of total time in an aircraft. You'll need 500 hours cross country. You'll need some night time and some instrument time. So those are some pretty hefty requirements. Once you meet those before applying, and you apply, you complete that training and you get your ATP. And this is, of course, if you're going for the airline route. So once you get your ATP, generally speaking, you start at a regional airline. You can think of this as like Allegiant flying out of Punta Gorda, Breeze flying out of RSW. These are generally, smaller airlines that are, short legs, usually ending up back at their home base at the end of the day. Once you're at a regional and you complete your contract, generally you flow into a major airline. You can think of a major airline as like United, Delta, or American. This is when you start making, some decent money, and you're pretty much set up. So some kind of in between here stuff is somewhere along the line, you become a cadet for a certain regional, and this is kind of like your pre-interview to starting there, and as they kind of check in with you and interview you, and you get your ATP, you usually flow into one of those regionals. So I hope this helps any friends or family that was confused about what the flow was for a civilian pilot. And thank you for listening.